Hello and welcome to another episode of CRT Sound System. My name is Tom, and we're having a little episode about Sayonara Wild Hearts. So, episode 56, I believe. Yes, episode 56.
Nice.
And I'm here, as always, with Reese. Reese, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah.
I know we say we've this episode has been on the books for a while, um,
Mm,
and but this is true of that one. Maybe not as uh, a as a foundational idea, but we've been talking about this one
yeah, you've been
for more
bugging
than a
me for
year.
this for a while.
I mean, this is one of my favorite games, one of my favorite soundtracks, and so I
mm,
think that it's well earned. Um,
yeah, absolutely. It's a really incredible soundtrack. I mean, not to tip our hand too early, but why would we feature it if it wasn't? um, but yeah, no guest this week actually. So it's been a while. We were just discussing. It's been nearly a year since we recorded an episode, a full episode that was just the two of us. So it'll be nice to
not
get back to basics for this.
not since Paradise Killer have we
Yeah,
joined forces.
an interesting sort of parallel to this game, I think, in some ways. Um,
Absolutely, very vibes based game in
mm,
for different reasons.
absolutely, yeah.
Uh, and this it's certainly true for this game as well as Paradise Killer
Yeah,
that the soundtrack is makes it, but it's a little bit more since it's a music game. That's kind of like a bit more of an obvious statement,
yeah.
but
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of music game. So I suppose yeah, just you can maybe explain the game, the sort of basic premise of it, just for anyone who might not be familiar.
it's a sort of I don't know. It's half a rhythm game, half just sort of like a semi platformer type situation. Maybe
Yeah,
platformer is the wrong word, but you're always kind of like just
it's like an
zooming
endless
around.
runner kind
Yeah,
of
that's
platformer.
a better way of putting it. It's a runner.
But it's also a rail shooter, and it's also um, like yeah, it's a bunch of different kind of styles and genres that the game constantly switches through as you play. But somehow manages to sort of be very consistent in terms of how you play it and like your sort of your goals throughout, even though
Yeah.
you're constantly switching perspectives and stuff like that. It's really um, it's really well executed.
Yeah, taking a step back a little bit, it's sort of meant to be more sort of busheling the mechanics around sort of like the narrative experience. It's this
Mm,
very sort of like metaphor impressionistic experience of this woman who has a broken heart, and you are just sort of taken through these sort of like musical interludes kind of representing these aspects of her struggles, that you're kind of free to interpret however you want.
yeah,
It's pretty clearly sort of supposed to be a metaphor because in the beginning it's just this chick on a long board going to the coffee shop, and then that sort of experience is elongated in each level. You're either on a motorcycle, or you're
mm,
riding a elk, or you have a cool outrun car, or you're
yeah.
one to one. Well, I think at the very last level, you're sailing a boat for a little while.
You're on a
So
boat, yeah,
it's all about this movement, and the movement matching the sort of like the narrative propulsion of the music.
yeah, yeah. It's a very sort of yeah, as you said, impressionistic is probably the best way to do it. And like, yeah, you can definitely sort of come at it in a lot of different ways. Like personally, it's sort of just like I read it very broadly.
Mm-hmm.
Just as like a sort of a person getting through their sort of their bad relationships or bad times in life, and then just coming out the other end of it as a better person. But like there's obviously a lot more different reads you can do and more specific reads if you're if if sort of depending on your own experience, I
I
suppose. And I know
absolutely.
like there's definitely like in a lot of gay people sort of read it in certain ways, and a lot of trans people have sort of a very strong connection to this game. I've noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll wait till one of the breaks to
Mm,
kind of make a more detailed dig into the narrative.
yeah,
But I do think that it's absolutely meant to be that kind of broad story, but it's a broad story. It's funny with queer media because I don't want to say there's two kinds of queer media, but there's two kinds of queer media. There's explicitly gay LGBTQ stuff that
hmm,
is, telling a specific story. And then, there is media that just is so not shitty, and is not even, I don't even necessarily mean it complimentary, where it's just like it is has good enough politics, good enough morals, good enough in its representation that you're just like, yeah, this is gay as hell. And I feel like Sayonara Wild Hearts is definitely more in the latter, where if you listen to in interviews with the developer, it doesn't seem to have a particularly gay point of view. It's more about these sort of like the broad ideas of these
yeah,
heartbreaks, and the way that they talked about the reason everything was so feminine is because that they were cataloging the landscape of sort of pop music at the time, and they felt like it was just so male dominated, and that outlook was so, he called it ugly, and so maybe there's like a tinge of politics in there, but it's
mm,
really like nothing too committed, and so it was just,
yeah,
it wanted a softer aesthetic, one of these kind of like, broad colorful ideas, and it just becomes something that if you are that if you are queer in some way, you can really connect with. And I certainly did. It's
mm,
it's uh, a a game that has been at the forefront. It's not something that really like cracked my egg or anything, but it's something. But it's a game that really stayed with me throughout my de-repression and coming out process, and
yeah,
replaying it afterwards, like I can see the like very kind of like, unspoken psychological underpinnings of the game
mm,
sort of like working on me, because like the first time I played it I was in tears, because the game is so propulsive, and like it's not very hard, you
yeah,
there are shots you can miss, and you can like fall off the edge sometimes. But
yeah,
mostly it's pretty snappy to get through, and
yeah,
so that like you're very engaged by the music and the gameplay, but it's still propelling you forward, and you are
mm,
having these battles with these motorcycle chicks or whatever. And so like just that experience of being a sort of like, I didn't have to get like too deep into the mechanics of it, and
mm,
just sort of like the themes and the music and everything created this like unique to me flow state of being like engaged in the narrative and everything, but still sort of like connecting to it as a game, and it was
yeah.
very emotional. But yeah, I don't want to go too much into it during the first break.
Yeah, we don't wanna give all everything away to start with. Yeah,
Absolutely, and I think too an important part of it is the music, and I think,
yeah,
it's definitely a. I'd be curious to what you have to say about this sort of like the general genre, and sort of like your more knowledgeable take on it. But I think that's such a huge part of the experience. We should listen to a little.
yeah, absolutely. I suppose yeah. Before we move on, I just wanted to check. Like you mentioned that you initially played this sort of a little bit and then came back to it later. Did you play it when it first came out, or when did you actually like finish it?
I didn't play it when it first came out, but I played it around when it came out, maybe like 9 months after or something like
Mm,
that. Somebody was going off about it, and I was like, "Oh, I like music games. I like the way this looks. I like the way this sounds."
yeah.
But So I don't know, maybe 9 months after it came out, something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, no, that's. I was just sort of curious on your timeline, and it's just because, yeah, it was a game that I was very much aware of when it came out, and um, I played a little bit of it, and then I was like, "This is a very good game. Can't wait to go back and finish it someday."
Yeah.
But the soundtrack is one that I have come back to quite a lot, because it's just got a very good sort of pop sound to it. Um, and actually, just realizing something there. So the if you're listening to this, our most recent episode, which isn't out now as of recording, but our most recent episode would be the Mirror's Edge episode, which was also made by Swedish people.
Yeah.
um, so just purely by coincidence. But like the that's something we mentioned at the end of that episode is how like the we were talking a little bit about the sort of the Swedish influence on pop music in the US and in the UK and just the West in general.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that comes through a lot in this game just because they were deliberately going for that kind of sound. Now, there's obviously bits and pieces where they sort of switch genres a little bit to various effects, but like for the most part, it's a very sort of broad pop sound to it.
Very,
Um,
very poppy, I would say.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah, and has one of the ways I saw it described was as like a visual album. Um, in the sense that like the it's got this very particular narrative and like the gameplay loop or
Hmm.
not the gameplay loop but the sort of the thread of the gameplay throughout, and like the music is a very important part of all of that. It's not like it's not an afterthought or anything like that. It is very much part of the entire experience to listen to the music, and not
Hmm.
just because it's sort of like music led in terms of the gameplay, but just in terms of the emotions that the game wants you to sort of experience. It is very forward in how the music sort of mirrors that and enhances it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a sort of visual album. I think is a good description of it, and I think it's a game that I don't think it's slight, but I think it sort of takes a back seat sometimes to the presentation
Oh yeah.
of the visuals and how that synergizes with the music. So
Hmm.
it's very interesting because we talk so much on here about how music can bump up a soundtrack, or music can bump up gameplay in these
Yeah.
very sort of specific ways. And this is a game where it's not it's not like, oh wow, Paradise Killer had a shitty soundtrack. You could have still played the game, but it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah.
But this is like, there are three points of a triangle are kind of balancing here. One of them being the music, and it's interesting to see how much the music impacts both the gameplay and sort of like the visual flow in the experience.
Hmm.
And I think I just think it's interesting to compare that to most of the other stuff that we listen to, where we just think, oh, this is a game where you're trying to reach a high score, and this is the soundtrack to it. I
Hmm.
feel like what's cool about Sayonara Wild Hearts is, like it or dislike it, those things are fused.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Well, I think with that we shall jump into the first block of tracks.
Yeah.
So a lot of the tracks here are quite short. So these blocks are going to have a lot of tracks in them, but won't be super long. Um,
Hmm.
the music, I suppose, to mention is all done by Daniel Olsson, with contributions by Jonathan Eng and vocals on any of the tracks that have vocals by Linnea and Olsson. Now we'll probably talk a little bit about everybody involved in that in another break, but just to sort of set the stage for that. So
Hmm.
all of these tracks. Yeah, so there's two vocal tracks, and then there's the rest are instrumentals. So we have Doki Doki Rush, Fighting Hearts, and then Forest Ghost and Forest Dub, Laser Love, and then the last track is Hearts and Swords. Definitely one of the things that when I'm listening to this soundtrack, I always wish the tracks were much longer,
Yeah.
because you start to get really into them and then they're over so soon. um, but that's I guess that's sort of an incentive to play the game as well, because you do get to hear longer versions, or at least looped versions that will sort of that you sort of carry you through.
Yeah, the soundtrack is absolutely just you're jamming through the core of the song, and in the game the levels have are presenting, you're still having to do twists and turns and streets and stuff like that.
Mm,
And so it feels like, there are parts of the song that, get looped for that. And
yeah,
it
yeah,
it, it feels, I don't want to say it's the better way, but it's clearly, designed like that for the game, and it
yeah.
feels like it's such a rich part of the experience.
Mm. Yeah, as say, as that sort of notion of it being a visual album, I think it is probably the best way to experience the music is to just sit down and play the game. Um, like it's a short game. Like, I mean, the music we have here, as I mentioned before, we were recording. Um, there's only about 50 minutes of music in terms of the actual soundtrack. The
Yeah.
game itself only takes about an hour and a half to go through. It's a very sort of arcadey experience in that
Hmm.
regard. Um, so like if you're in any way interested in the music, like, I would highly recommend just seeking out this game. It's not expensive, and like, it's a really good hour of a game, and it's one of those games that tends to go on sale quite often, like a lot of indie games do as well.
Put together, I think that, it's that oftentimes, we utter the term like video game story,
Oh.
uh, and it's sorry. Did you just hear something?
No.
I'm sorry. I got a weird error there. Sorry. Let me start
Okay.
over. Yeah. It just you hear about the video game narrative, and you
Mm.
sort of want to cringe thinking about it. You think about Bioshock. Uh, would you kindly and weep in horror that used to, like, matter to us. But like, I think that this is honestly like a very intelligently designed sort of like
Mm.
experience. The game centers around sort of uh these five heartbreaks
Mm.
that this woman goes through, and kind of reading about it online, the heartbreaks mean everything to different people. I
Yeah.
think it is it's very easy, I think, both to look at each, because each character and setting has its own tarot card
Yeah.
associated with it. And so, the heartbreaks are the devil, death, lovers, stuff like that. And so it's very easy to take sort of like broad representations of your each encounter with these heartbreaks. But also the heartbreaks, each level is so personal. Like,
Mm.
I don't blame people who think that each like set of levels is about an ex. Uh, you
Yeah.
know,
It does have a bit
um,
of a Scott Pilgrim vibe to it in that regard.
like, I wasn't gonna say that because I feel like it is cooler than that. Uh,
It's definitely cooler than that. Yeah.
but the first level is in Hate Hell Valley. You're fighting the dancing devils, and you're doing this motorcycle uh, chase stuff, and then you meet your motorcycle. You meet the motorcycle gang of all girls, and then uh, jump from bike to bike, and eventually punch them to death, and then punch their heart. And then sort of then the cycle repeats. You go to the next heartbreak. In the
Yeah.
heartbreak, and the sort of there's like two or three levels and then there's sort of like a vocal finale, and I think we're listening that's going to be the block after this one. The one we've
Yeah.
been listening to are I think the first two or three heartbreaks. They're sort of build up levels because you always
Yeah.
sort of like, you're always traversing in some way. You're on a stag or you're on your car, and then
Yeah.
you meet up with some broad who's trouble. Uh, and so, yeah, I don't know. And so, just to say that I think that that's structure. It's all so breezy, and you get into a rhythm
Mm.
of the story that you. It's just very compelling.
Hmm.
It's very interesting to engage with that, and I think works on the scale that they're working on, where this is
Absolutely.
definitely a low budget kind of like relatively low budget indie experience, but it's because it's like a lot of smart musicians and programmers putting together something specific. You have a kind of really special. Um, I'm not going to say it's unknown experience, but certainly not AAA experience.
Yeah. No, this is definitely something you could only really get in a sort of indie game.
Yeah,
um, Even though it does, sort of, as I say, sort of harkens back to old arcade games in a lot of ways,
it
and is
does.
obviously fucking rife with references to different various different games,
Oh yeah.
in a fun way, in a way that doesn't feel sort of pandering. That it's that it's like it's clearly going. This is an influence. Here's our take on Outrun for a bit. Here's our take on Panzer Dragoon. Um, and it sort of goes through those, and like in structuring the game the way it is, like as you mentioned, you've got the five different sort of heartbreaks. However you want to view that, I think you could probably view it as like the five stages of grief in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
There's a lot of ways you could interpret it, and all of these, but the way that everything is structured is really good, because you have your start of each stage, or your sort of your in between bits. There's it where it's sort of liminal,
Hmm.
and then you start the heartbreak, then where as you say, you're going through a city or a forest or whatever, and that progresses then until you're fighting the boss. And it's a fairly straightforward sort of very video gamey structure, um, but it never feels like it's something that is just sort of going through the motions either. It's like it's doing all this in a very deliberate way, and notably as well, like all of these sections are quite short. Like some of these levels will probably take you like less than a minute to actually get through.
Hmm.
Um, and like you can do score attack stuff as well, which is kind of, it sort of seems like a weird addition to the game in a lot of
It,
ways.
it is it is the weirdest part of the game,
Like,
um, and
yeah,
it and it is really the most. Uh, it's the part where they could have easily, I think, reined it in a bit, but they
mm,
didn't, and I respect that,
yeah,
because at the end of every song, it still tells you silver medal. It's just like it is so fucking intrusive. You're having this
yeah.
emotional moment, and it's like, by the way,
Here comes
bronze.
Queen Latifah to shout at you about your score. Which,
um,
yeah, to mention if you weren't aware, it's Queen Latifah who's the announcer for the game.
I just learned that today. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's something I knew about it and then remembered when I finished the game today.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think. Did you actually finish it? Finish a playthrough of it
Yeah.
today? Yeah, I think we both finished a playthrough of it today, just to sort of refresh memories on it. Like, yeah, and as I say, got to the end credits and I was like, oh fuck yeah, I completely forgot that it was Queen Latifah.
Queen Latifah. Yeah, and you unlock you unlock a mode where you can play the whole game at once and kind
Yeah,
of do a score attack of that, which I thought was very cute, and it's
yeah,
very something that's very feasible with such a short game, is that you could
absolutely, yeah.
say you could kind of just be like, why don't we just push the speed run button, on this
Yeah,
game and see what happens. So that's really cool.
yeah. It's a cool little addition. It doesn't really, uh, it's entirely additive, I suppose. There's nothing really to be taken away from it, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it's necessarily an interesting way to play it if you're if you're there for the sort of the thematic or emotional
No,
experience
no,
of it.
no. I think its home is in the extras tab in the menu for good
Yeah,
reason and belongs there. Because I
yeah,
do think that you do want to kind of have them broken up into chapters, and I do respect that it won't let you forget it's a game on some level by
hmm,
because it's something you could easily do otherwise is just kind of like not care about the hearts at all and just vibe your way through the game. And there's
hmm,
only there's a bunch of forgiving rhythm button pushing moments, and then
yeah,
there's a couple of tricky of like avoid a fireball moment, but it's never anything punishing. It's always like,
yeah,
oh, you just have to avoid like a tricky 3 round combo
yeah,
one time at the end of the level, and so
yeah.
it's
And
not a
if you
big deal.
fail, it tends to sort of kick you back fairly. Like it doesn't. You don't go back to the start of the level or anything like that. Generally, like the game, the each of the levels are um, sort of split into little phrases that are like a little section where you have to, as I say, you have to do a bit of dodging or you have to do a bit of navigating
Yeah,
some jumps or something like that, but it'll only ever really start you back at the start of any given section, and
yeah,
it does
yeah.
so like almost instantly, like as soon as you die you're playing again. So like
Hmm.
it's that sort of Super Meat Boy approach where it's just like you can do fast iterations trying to figure out the patterns and stuff like that. If a section gives you trouble, like you're not sort of waiting for loading screens constantly or anything like that, which I think makes the game feel a lot breezier when you're sort of just going through it casually.
Absolutely. You're not jolted out of your musical flow
Yeah,
if you're having trouble with the fireball part or whatever.
yeah,
At least you at least not with one or two fuck ups because
yeah.
it throws you back in the game so quickly.
Yeah, and I think if you do some sections quite badly, it will offer to let you just skip it.
Yes,
But you'd
like
never do so for your gamer pride. But
Queen Latifah really floats in there and is just like, listen, looks like you fucking suck. It's really one of the more insulting one of those.
I do like when games do that. It's like the chicken hat in Metal Gear Solid 5. Yeah. Um, so yeah, the music itself then, as I mentioned, mostly composed by a guy called Daniel Olsson,
Mhm.
um, who also did the soundtrack for Ilo Milo. I don't know if you ever played that game.
What is Ilo Milo?
Ilo Milo was an Xbox 360 game. It's just like it's sort of like a puzzle game where you
Hmm.
play as two little dudes, one called Ilo, one called Milo, and you can sort of switch between them. And the puzzle is basically so that the two you have to get them to meet in the
Okay.
center, and it's like it's a very it's got a very very cute aesthetic. The music is really really good. It's sort of like this sort of music box music to it. Like the whole game is incredibly cute. Definitely, I'm not sure you can even play it anymore. I don't think it's on the Xbox backwards compatibility. But it was a very
What
very
a
cute little indie game
what
back
a
in the
rip.
day that I really enjoyed playing.
It sounds like a delightful puzzle game.
Yeah, it's really really cute.
The two little dudes they gotta meet up. What more? What more do you need from video games? Two little dudes.
They're just a little guy and another little guy. Like I mean, what like
Okay, one Milo, but get this the other one. Milo.
yeah, and I suppose as another pop music connection, um, Billie Eilish has a song called Ilo Milo named after that game.
Truly, that's
I'm not sure if the song itself is about the game, but I know that she named a song Ilo Milo, and it was specifically named after the game because she loved playing it as a kid.
sick.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, Daniel Olsson, as I say, he's been composing for a while. Also an OC remixer. Shout out to OC Remix again.
yeah,
um, so so looking at it here, but he was also he worked with what did I say? The guy's name was Jonathan Eng. So like he wrote a lot of the songs on his own, but then Jonathan Eng would like write a song on guitar and send it to him, and then it would be for him to then, it would be for Daniel Olsson then to actually take what was on the guitar and sort of transpose that and arrange it for a more sort of synthy kind of like there's a lot of synthwave in this soundtrack. A lot of like new disco and sort of those kind of genres, like on top of the pop music itself. Like you hear those synths a lot in those other genres. So like it was his job to sort of take that music and turn it into something for the game. And then they got in a singer then, as I mentioned, Linnea Olsson, who would just do all the vocals, and like the vocals are absolutely incredible in this.
yeah,
There's a lot of great lyrics that I think sort of get into the more thematic elements of the game.
hmm
That like songs that we'll probably talk about later, but like stuff like Begin Again, I think just sort of really hit the spot when they do, and a large part of that is because of the performance of the vocals as well as the lyrics.
yeah, absolutely. I think it is. There is in many ways. What was the name of the vocalist again?
Linnea Olsson.
Linnea Olsen is this kind of almost the voice actress of the protagonist in a way, even though that they're not in any way like specifically connected in the game. It is hard not to feel the orchestration. Begin Again is the first is the conclusion to the first Heartbreak, and
Mm,
so it's sort of getting you on that road of recovering from grief, or however else you want to interpret. uh and so it feels like it works within the song and in the game, and sort of like when you get to that last level, I think you think back and it resonates. And I'm pretty
mm,
sure other songs in the game will say Begin Again at key points as well, to sort of like link back to that.
yeah.
So I definitely can appreciate the kind of artistry there,
Mm,
construction.
yeah. And I suppose other thing we're mentioning is just the inclusion of Claire de Lune.
Yeah.
um, So it's I think it's just used for the tutorial, just at the very start, just when
Well,
you're sort
yeah,
of on
the,
your
the
little
the the
skateboard.
prologue, if you will,
Yeah, yeah,
because it is
um,
it is very much a game that like it the in there are the five heartbreak sequences, and then there's one level before that, which is the tutorial prologue, and then the
yeah,
extremely long last song.
yeah,
um
which is super good.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I think we'll go ahead and jump into the next block of tracks anyway. So another fairly long one, or sorry, another good few tracks, but not that long, in actual music terms. So the first track I have is Parallel Universes, then Night Drift, then Reverie, Transonic Gravity, Hate Skulls, and then the last track is called A Place I Don't Know. The last one is a real change of pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really really lovely though. I just it's one of those tracks. I don't say I don't know where it shows up in the game, but like
In the ending, Blue.
oh,
Uh,
okay, yeah, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay, just because it's a song that I've only heard sort of out of context, and when I was
Hmm.
when I was playing finishing up the game earlier, I actually didn't have the music very loud because I was keeping an eye on Elliot at the time. So I did miss some of the sort of the cutscene songs. But yeah, it's a really really
Yeah.
lovely little song. And again, those lyrics are really really um, they're really sort of meaningful to what the story of the game is trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is such a, I think, I don't know, sweeping. It feels the sort of thing where what am I trying to say here? Well, I kind of like it's a thin line between deeply corny and deeply moving, right?
Of course,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and I feel like it's the sort of thing it's playing with these big ideas. I feel it's the sort of thing that it's tough to get something like this right, and it's the sort of thing that I think something that would tout itself as a visual album game would even dare.
Hmm.
But it has these kind of broad ideas of grief, and they even have the arcana to sort of like let
Mm.
you to further let yourself take the game as metaphor.
Yeah.
But in the final sequence of the game, you kind of reconnect with the all five of the heartbreaks
Yeah.
after you have this like very like big sweeping kind of boss fight. um
Yeah.
and it's very moving because after the first half of the last level is legitimately quite hard,
Mm.
and then it eases up on you as you kind of basically do this boss rush of the five heartbreaks,
Yeah.
and
Just sort of
you
recontextualizes all of them as it does so, yeah.
exactly, but it's you, instead of beating the shit out of them and then punching their heart into nothingness, you give them a little kiss, and it's almost like it's almost silly. It's a little kiss on the cheek.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like bring them into you, and then sort of like bring their heart into you, and it's this series of you kind of like seeming like you're disarming
Mm.
the five heartbreaks. They're like, they expected anything but this.
Yeah.
And that is sort of like the grand finale for how, I don't want to say necessarily it has to be about you successfully process grief or totally overcome, but there's this theme of integration,
Hmm.
of like making these heartbreaks a part of you so you can begin again.
Yeah.
And I think sort of like I'm picking this particular break to talk about this because we are moving on. The next uh, section is going to be all the vocal tracks,
Yeah.
and those are really the kind of like emotional high points that you have with the
Yeah.
heartbreak. And I think though that's where all of these sort of like narrative parts and narrative emotions flow through. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like I maybe I shouldn't have spelled out the game so brusquely, but I do think it's kind of beside the point, kind of like what it's about. It's about this. You already know whether you're gonna like that kind of game and enjoy that
Mm.
kind of music, and it's sort of like it's not the newest concept in the world to have a love conquers all type of ending.
Yeah.
So, but it does feel like it's it's something that the game sells. It's not something anyone's going to persuade you one way
Yeah.
or the other works.
Yeah. It's like if you're coming into it with a sort of cynical mindset, it's not going to work for you. Um,
Oh yeah.
and as I say, or as you said, there's that sort of thin line between something being corny and something being sort of profound.
Yeah.
um, and like it could easily go to either side, either way, but I think they do successfully thread the needle. But if you're the kind of weirdo who sort of who looks at stuff that is sort of maybe like tropey or a little bit cliche as being inherently negative, I don't think it's going to work for you.
But I do think the game works for a lot of people. I think if
Yeah.
I think the game, if it's the sort of thing that you're gonna engage with, I think it's something that does work for most people, which makes the and doesn't necessarily require I would say, a particular like queer mindset or anything.
No.
One of the most interesting parts about reading this game is reading what other people think the story is.
Yeah.
So I could take their opinions and make it what I think the story is. Um, but like some people were like, have it had to be a lot broader. But there was a subsection of people who were like mad about it being queer to some people, and they're just like,
Yeah.
there's nothing anywhere that says that these are lesbian relationships.
Yeah.
These are
Because
these
the
are just
game.
gals who are best pals. We're getting over grief. And so, you could ding a story for creating that
Yeah.
reaction, but I honestly kind of really like that this game still had like a moving message of getting over grief, even to somebody who is, less than woke.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a funny idea that you'd even approach this game and not sort of um be in for whatever metaphor you're willing to read into it broadly, or you can read this very specifically. Like the people you mentioned too are like
Mm-hmm.
these. Each of these is a specific relationship that can be sort of mapped somewhere in this person's life. Um, to like that very broad thing, but I just can't imagine being the kind of person who's like, I refuse to believe there's any way to have a queer reading of this game unless the game specifically
Yeah.
tells you this is a queer game.
I mean, I think I think that you are setting
Yeah.
yourself up for a pointless task to want to argue that this
Yeah.
argue against the queerness of this game. Like even if it is not specific, just the
Hmm.
semiotics of every character being
Yeah,
a
or at least
woman,
very
every
androgynous.
character being the main character,
Yeah.
it's every character turns into the main character eventually. And it's like, you can certainly make specific arguments that maybe it's not
Mm.
sapphic or whatever, and it's all about this internal realm of this
Yeah.
one girl. Okay, but still, it's hard not to have this mirror. And I know several queer people who just are have slamming both of their fists on the table, screaming "Sayonara Wild Hearts is gay." They love it because it's gay and makes them think gay things. And I just don't think it has the same kind of
Yeah.
straight representation out
Yeah,
there.
I mean, shout
Um,
outs to those people, I suppose, who are like, I'm determined to have a straight reading
yeah.
of this. um, but yeah, so like the visuals of it, like the character designs are so strongly like feminine coded. Um, I just it's hard to read this in any other way, even broadly.
No, I feel like it's the sort of thing where we're gonna read an interview in a couple years where some key part of the designer was just like, yeah, no, it's specifically I made my part of it, everything
Yeah,
involved with it specifically trans, and that
yeah.
synergized with everything else. It feels like it's gonna be a matrix scenario.
Yeah, no, and even then, you'll probably still have people trying to deny it because it wasn't in the game.
Hmm.
Like like all the Bridget weirdos.
But the thing is that it is interesting though it, that it is so specifically queer, and it's so pointed because
Hmm.
it's not about that in the story. It is about all of these
Yeah,
larger things, and it is so preoccupied with the presenting you with these sort of cool
yeah,
representations to make it clear. And I think it is clear. I think you look at the stuff like you fighting a giant metal
yeah,
wolf in the forest, and there's something like weirdly more like savage and lonely about that heartbreak than say the when you're fighting the hermit and you're doing the sort of like more video game throwback
Yeah.
vector stuff. It's creating these thematic flavors
Yeah.
for the five heartbreaks in a way that are not trying to specifically uh put the gay in your face, and like I am, believe me, nothing I love more when the game shoves its gay in my face. But that is, I'm just saying it, that's what makes it interesting, that
Mm.
it is so gay in its
Yeah.
semiotics
Absolutely.
anyway.
And it's one of those weird things of like, so we in like sort of a very heteronormative way when we tend to look at sort of straight stories as being universal. Um, but like you can
Hmm.
do stories like this that are like I think very explicitly gay. Like I don't think this game is shy about its gayness whatsoever. But even myself as
Yeah.
a cis het man, I can still sort of understand the experiences that sort of leads to these kind of feelings, and sort of heartbreaks and how they change you is such a universal concept. um it's good to see that expressed in a way that isn't just a standard heterosexual relationship kind of thing, or a standard sort of heteronormative view on the
Yeah,
world.
absolutely. Well, it's sort of like, for me, it's kind of going back to what I mentioned before. It's that anything that isn't even explicitly queer has
Yeah.
become queer by osmosis, just by being too interesting, or sort of generally good to be co-opted by a
Yeah.
reactionary mindset. Like I'm not even much one
Mm.
for tarot stuff, but I like it in
It's
this
a nice
game,
aesthetic. Yeah.
and sort of like it, and it's sort of like, as queer people have sort of made tarot part of their culture, just for kind of similar reasons that the game included tarot as metaphor. In this game, it's sort of like it is queer culture by, I don't want to say
But yeah, by
accidents, by maybe
incidents.
happenstance, that
Yeah.
that it
No,
shares.
that's true. Yeah. All right, so I think we're going to jump into the vocal tracks. So this is going to be
Let's do it.
a tough one, in a good way. As I say, a lot of these tracks are sort of very
Yeah.
a lot more emotional, because these are all the sort of the battles with the different
Mm-hmm.
heartbreaks. So like as we mentioned, you go through these sort of stages and you get to the end and there's a boss fight, and that's where the vocal tracks sort of come in for all of them.
Let's see. There's the devil motorcycle heartbreaks. There's Death, who is kind of like this androgynous uh, figure who is much more
Yeah,
specifically trying to kill you. There
the
is
metal
the
wolf.
metal
Yeah,
wolf fight. That's the
yeah.
moon. There's the lovers, who
Oh,
are the
yeah. That
the
that one
twins with the
confused me for a while.
swords.
That took me a while to get through. Just that sort of the way it sort of when they snap their fingers, to the level sort of switches, the geometry of it. That took me a while to sort of get my head around. That was probably the most difficult part of the game for me.
That level is incredible.
So well done. I've never seen a game do something like that before.
That one is, I feel, maybe mine. So it's
Mm.
like going to be the third one in here. But it's the one with the like. It first is like you're fighting the duo, and each snap creates a different road, and so you're trying to navigate it. And
Yeah.
then they start clapping,
On the
like
offbeat,
they
yeah.
clap their hands together and create on the offbeat to create like a third, and sort of like it creates this new aspect to it. And what is wonderful about that song is that at the very end of it, you learn that
Yeah.
you have snaps as well. It's like not baked into the level. It's
Yeah.
like part of the narrative of the level. It's like the last third of it. You can snap and create a safe road with lots
Yeah.
of heart score points, for you to go in, and it kind of
Yeah,
confounds
they're
the
so
stereo
confused by
levels. It's great.
it. Yeah, it's really like one of those moments in the game where I was like, oh wow, this is really trying something interesting with the form, and again like that in how it incorporates not just the music you're hearing, but like how you as a person feel music, like how you feel time signatures and stuff like that. It is actually important to navigating that level, and that's a really really cool thing that like you don't really see that in rhythm games very often. I think the only other game that I can think of that does something similar is Thumper. I don't know if you've ever played that.
I have I should play more of Thumper, but I have played Thumper, and
Yeah,
I know what
and
you're
that
talking
does
about.
that does sort of that as well, where like the design of the levels is often sort of relies upon your ability as a human to sort of see the pattern in music. Like you don't need to be a music expert or like a musician. A lot of this is sort of very intuitive to people. So like just the way it manages to do that, I think, is such a cool little moment in the game. I'd love to see something expand on that, because as I say, I've never experienced that in rhythm games specifically, and I've played a lot of rhythm games.
Absolutely. And just to, I want to get to the music, but I want to the second to last Heartbreak rather is the Hermit, and the Hermit is fun because that one is you are
Yeah,
playing. She's wearing like a VR headset, and then you're playing the
it's
game
an
on top of
Undertale
her
boss
VR
fight.
headset, and if you go too far left or right, it's
Yeah,
so finally we're doing an Undertale song. Uh, but these are the
yeah.
cumulative songs to those. I think we don't have. I think we have them in
I
order.
believe so. Yeah,
Um,
I think I made sure they're in order.
yeah. So like begin again is the devil's
Yeah,
fight,
and
and
then
it goes each progressive
yeah,
heartbreak kind of battle song. So these are the
yeah.
climaxes. Anyways, I'll shut
All
up.
right, so yeah, as a begin again, dead of night, mine and inside.
I can still recall trudging through the cold December snow. We didn't know that it was the end. That the saddest story ever told would unfold. Don't you know how it goes? You leave me sad and scarred, broken glass and ash. I guess that's what we are. I have tried to forget all pain and regrets. It's the last time. It's the last time tonight. As you hold me so close in your arms that just drove. It's the last time, and I'm strangely alright. I need to understand, 'cause I'm just happy to get Face drum in my chest, strobing lights reflected in my tears, crystal clear. Shake the pain, break away, leave it all behind. With a hint of dawn, I'm already gone. Staring with empty eyes, looking right through me. Perfectly void of life, lovers like zombies. When all you get for is the fire, you end up blinded by the light. I'm the only one
I think just like listening to all those vocal tracks back to back um, really makes me think that like Linnea Olsson is the MVP of this soundtrack. Like
10,000%. Yeah.
incredible performance. Like just I was reading up about her and like she's not a pop singer, so like she even though coming in singing pop songs, like you get this sort of very interesting approach to it, and like her vocal hooks are fucking incredible. Like whatever she's doing on it just really really works. It's like there's so much emotionality to her voice. The lyrics themselves are as we mentioned really really good across the board, and like she just really sells it. And like I think so again the way we talk about how music will often push something from great into incredible. I think her vocals have done the same to the very good songs that they're backing.
Yes.
But yeah, begin again. Just to start with the first one, like it's such a good, like it really is the sort of centerpiece of the soundtrack, and I think it's interesting that like it's the first one you come to, and it's like I feel like that makes it hard to read the game as just like a series of relationships. Because to put that song where it is in the game at the very end of the first level, that's to me is like this is where the healing starts kind of thing. Like if somebody has gone through whatever they've gone through to start with, and then they have to go through the process of healing, you would put that sort of at the start. That feels like something that you would be doing at the end if you were to sort of treat this as a sort of more linear narrative where like each relationship is sort of compounds it, and then finally the person is able to sort of heal at the very end. I think putting it at the start gives it a very different read.
No, tough to disagree. I'm just it's clearly, I think, meant to be a broader metaphor in general too. It's like
Yeah.
because listening to all of those tracks, just those grouped together, it's not that they felt samey, but they felt like I don't know of a similar
There's like a
art.
suite of songs, like
Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
And so I feel like you get a lot of the narrative and emotional core and themes
Yeah.
from them, and sort of like her being the personification of those themes and this game that has created so much emotionality for so many people. I agree, she's the MVP, and really the beating heart of the game.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, it's a really great performance all across. Um, the third one, that was one I just like. Mine was the name of that one. That one was one I was just like that vocal hook and the chorus is just like, and you never hear anything like that on the radio.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly elevated in a way that like you would never get sort of in mainstream pop. And I mean, to be fair, now you're starting to see a little bit more of that as people are sort of broadening their tastes a little bit. You do sort of you're starting to see that seep into pop music itself. But I don't think you'd ever go that weird with it.
Yeah, I'm very curious because Swedish has had such the Swedes have had such a huge impact on pop music, and this
Yeah.
being a Swedish pop game, how I mean, because to me it doesn't sound terribly representative of pop music at all. But I guess I'm also not the one to ask. I'm not the one with the knowledge. So
Yeah. No, it's it feels like it's this synthwave is probably the biggest sort of musical anchor in this game. But like those songs I think are they're pop in a way in structurally, but in terms of like composition and arrangement, they're so much more beyond that.
Yeah.
And it's like it's always nice to imagine how good pop could be if people were able to do stuff like that. Yeah, so I don't think have we got much more to say about this, or will we jump into the last
I
block,
feel
do
like
you
I've been
think?
very very effusive about it, and I kind of
Yeah.
want to. And like the next segment are the heartbreaks, which I think is
Yeah.
a nice little part of this game too.
Mhm.
And I've kind of I feel like I've made my case for this game and the
Yeah.
things and the different parts of it.
Yeah.
The heartbreaks I think are lovely little segments because every little world that you unlock opens with one of these heartbreaks, either 1, 2, 3, or 5, 4 or 5, and it's a little bit more surreal, like you're logging into the heartbreak matrix or whatever. And so they're their own thing, kind of apart.
Yeah. Yeah, they sort of work as a little buffer, I guess, from like the bosses to the next stage. So it gives a sense that you're like traveling
Absolutely.
from one place to the next, and that there's a progression rather than just like jumping straight from boss to the start of the next level. Like all these are quite short, so like they're just I think just about sort of bridging the levels in that way.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we've got the 5 heartbreak tracks, and then at the very end of that of the block, then we're going to have Wild Hearts Never Die, which is another sort of centerpiece vocal track. And yeah, one of my favorite tracks on the soundtrack as well. Like definitely something like. Oh, I lost my train of thought there. But Wild Hearts Never Die.
Wild Hearts
What?
Never Die is the final track.
Yeah.
Or it's the final level is an amalgamation of 3 or 4 different tracks, including that one that we listened to earlier. That was sort of the more acoustic, slow song.
The Place I Don't Know. Yeah.
Yeah, The Place I Don't Know. Thank you. And so it's and this is just a small piece of it, the sort of vocal portion of it.
Uh-huh.
So it is sort of like, I think, the very much the core, and I think that the level extends a lot of this different stuff out because it's the most gamey, and it's sort of like the one level driving a point home the most. So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that it's sort of like you can't really listen to the last level song. You can listen to just pieces of it. But this is
Yeah.
it, and that's the name of the final level, is Wild Hearts Never Die, which
Yeah.
is true.
All right, let's go.
They said diamond knives couldn't kill it, and that our love would live on until it all fades to black. Names roll by like a movie, no way back. Come on, who are we fooling? This is all it is, this is all goodbye. 'Cause one lost never die, one lost never die. We just see this shit like butterflies. 'Cause one lost never die, one lost never die. Bring 1,000 blades, we won't feel the sting. Our love shines bright, but then everything fades to black. Names roll by like a movie, no way back. Come on, who are we fooling? This is how it is, this is our goodbye. 'Cause wild hearts never die, wild hearts never die. We'll see this shit like butterflies. 'Cause wild hearts never die, wild hearts never die.
Forgot we were even on the podcast.
Remembering I'm on this podcast all of a sudden while being in a stoned reverie
Yeah.
is a regular is something I've experienced dozens of times now.
Yeah. That's just, yeah, it's really easy to get sort of all caught up in it with these tunes, and yeah, you know, it's hard to overstate as we have been doing, but like really worth listening to the soundtrack, and really worth sort of using the game as a vector for the soundtrack.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're going to sit down and listen to this music, why not sit down and just play the game?
Absolutely. And you know, on a personal level, you know, this game has been in my subconscious ever since I first played it. I don't even think I didn't even understand what it was doing to me. I'm sure there is, if once I saw the TV glow, I'll have a better way to articulate it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very special to me. I think it's a great game, great soundtrack. Yeah, I'm glad we did an episode about it.
Yeah,
Glad we all can listen to it. And yeah, I agree with you that this is one where you play. You know, you can
Yeah.
listen to the soundtrack of a lot of Final Fantasies or stuff that we feature on here and say is just like, you know, it's fine if you don't play every Dragon Quest and listen to the OST.
Yeah. And I mean,
Or
like,
maybe
we've
Dragon
never
Quest
been.
is not the best example considering the composer. But you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, like, we're not shy on this on the podcast about just being like, we didn't play the game, but we'd like the music, so we're here to talk about the music. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I do really think that, like, you're getting, as enjoyable as the songs are, like, you're getting a more compromised experience by not playing the game while you're listening to it.
Hmm.
Um, because the music is doing so much and the game itself is doing so much in concert. Um, that was not an intentional pun, but
Yeah.
but like they're doing these things together in a very very deliberate way. That like each part enhances the other. Like even in a way that like I think a lot of rhythm games don't necessarily sort of do, because it's not a rhythm game as such. Like there's very
Hmm.
few things in the game that like where you have to press something at a specific time. There's a lot of the boss fights maybe have little sort of QTE button presses that you press in time with the music, but it's not a Guitar Hero, it's not a Frequency or anything like that. It's very much its own sort of musical concept. I would say probably closer to something like Res, or even like Tetris Effect. And
Sure,
just
sure.
in terms of how it's sort of trying to convey sort of music and gameplay as a complete thing.
I would agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that ramble over, I think we'll close out the episode. So we've no guest, as I said, so nobody to plug anything. But if you want to put your plugs in here, Reese, go ahead.
Check out Vigatrito and Existential Warfare. I would like to plug this podcast, CRT Sound System, which I love. I love this episode.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving me a chance to ramble on about this one, Tom.
Yeah. I love
Did you have
playing
a
it. I
good
love
time?
talking about it. Yeah, it was a really good game.
You enjoyed yourself in this past hour or so of
Yes,
recording this podcast?
absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's what all I want to know. Just want to have a good time with my pal.
Absolutely, as is. Yeah, it's one of the highlights of my week when we get to record. Just always a good time. So yeah, that's for the podcast itself. We can be found on Blue Sky mostly is where I am. I
Yeah.
doom scroll Twitter, but I try not to post too much there these days. But new episodes go up there. We recently had a really good bonus episode on the Patreon. So to clarify, we have a Patreon. You can sign up for $1 or more a month, and you get bonus episodes. Which are actually free for everybody, but you get them in higher quality, and then you
right.
get the regular episodes in a higher quality or a higher bit rate as well. But yeah, I was really pleased with our little acid jazz episodes. So if you're interested, even if you don't want to subscribe, you can just you can go and listen to the episodes. We're also now on YouTube, because you can put podcasts on YouTube. So if you search for CRT Sound System on YouTube, there'll be the podcast there. I'm currently working on a way to see if I can get those bonus episodes uploaded to YouTube, maybe with some video visualizations of some sort. But I need to sit down and spend some time in Adobe Premiere to do that, I think.
Understood.
Yeah. And I think that's it really. Yeah. Follow the podcast on Blue Sky. Come join the Discord. Yeah.
Yeah. Come on the podcast. Most importantly.
Yes. Do come on the podcast.
And just talk about whatever the fuck you want. Within almost. But-
We talk a lot about talk a lot of bullshit on this podcast.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Nobody appointed us to do this, so if you're listening and you're like, what the fuck are these idiots talking about?
I was under the impression that the Irish government named us the official podcast of
Oh, that's true. That is in our Twitter bio actually, Ireland's official podcast or something like that.
Excellent. All right. Well, let us say goodbye
Let's
to
go,
all.
yeah.
I had a great time.
Absolutely. Me too. So the last track is called The World We Knew and is another sort of quiet little acoustic track. I think it's the one that plays at the very end of the game.
Maybe I'm confusing them. But
They're quite similar thematically and musically, so that could be it. But I think this is the one that plays at the very end. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. Good to talk to you again, Reese. Take
as
care.
always.